Don't take this wrong, but it never even occurred to me that you might be gay.
Well, it never even occurred to me that you might be straight.
Is there any show more perfectly suited for a gay 90s romp than Frasier? When the show first premiered in the early 90s, television often treated gay characters as a source of fear. But by the time it was in its final season, TV shows were having a gay old time. All aboard and welcome to Matt Baum's Culture Cruise. This time our port of call is my hometown of Seattle for a visit with the Crane family, all of whom are absolutely, definitely, without a doubt, totally heterosexual.
I am not gay, Guy.
I'll gay it up a little.
That does it. We're finding another motel.
And by the way, thanks to everyone who makes Culture Cruise possible with a pledge of support on Patreon, folks like Albert Judd. Head over to patreon.com/Matt Baum or click the link in the description to check out the rewards for backers. Over the course of the 90s, TV's approach to queer characters shifted with amazing speed, completely transforming from one end of the decade to the other. And with queer storylines peppered throughout the show's 11-season run, Frasier was along for the entire ride. But before we dive in on Frasier, we need to look at what TV was like for queer characters when the show premiered. One of the first gay sitcom episodes of the 90s was, believe it or not, on Married with Children in 1990. That episode was ahead of its time with a really affirming, positive depiction of gay men.
You work, you cook, and you like sports?
Yeah.
I love you.
In fact, 1991 turned out to be a big year for gay marriage on TV, since the first serious lawsuit over the issue had just been filed in Hawaii. The Golden Girls tackled the issue.
Blanche, we're getting married.
But that's impossible. Clayton brothers can't marry sisters. That's right, you're from the South.
And the show Rock went even further, showing TV's first same-sex commitment ceremony.
I mean, Russell here just said he was gay.
Oh, for God's sakes, Rock, it's the 90s. Don't you ever watch Oprah?
But aside from that one episode of Married with Children, just about every sitcom that tackled queer topics in the early 90s presented it as a problem, something negative that the main characters needed to worry about. Murphy Brown did an episode where Miles panics over having a gay dream. Designing Women did an episode where Suzanne panics when a friend comes out.
Oh, Suzanne, loosen up. It's the 90s.
Yeah, well, it's not the gay 90s.
Oh, but it was. And the gay 90s were just getting started, thanks in large part to Frasier. That one series probably did more gay episodes than any other until Ellen and Will and Grace. And it started with a 1994 episode entitled The Matchmaker. I have a whole separate video about that one, but here's a quick recap to get you caught up, and so we can look at how it compares to later gay episodes. It starts with Frasier meeting his new boss, Tom. Tom assumes that Frasier is gay due to some accidental innuendo.
I take it then you are unattached?
Yes, but I haven't given up hope.
Well, you may have come to the right place.
Really?
Yes.
A lot of this episode hinges on misunderstandings, which was Frasier's specialty. Big, broad farces based on something left unsaid. But while Frasier fails to pick up on Tom's sexuality, Tom's pretty open about it with other characters.
Oh, you tell one or two people you're gay, and before you can blink, it's all over the station.
Well, they don't call it broadcasting for nothing.
Roz takes this news entirely in stride, which is quite a change from how other shows of the time handled things. Gay characters had previously been presented as a problem. Listen to how Blanche responds to her brother coming out on the Golden Girls.
You look me in the face and tell me you really are what you just said you are.
I think you heard me the first time, Blanche.
You know it's a big deal when it gets the very special episode music. But Roz doesn't even turn around. She heard what Tom said, and it's not a problem for her. I'm trying to think of an earlier example of a sitcom character coming out and nobody batting an eye, and I'm not coming up with anything. Let me know if you can think of anything earlier. Things escalate between Tom and Frasier with innocent conversation that Frasier doesn't realize is flirting, and soon Tom is sure they're talking about one thing while Frasier thinks another.
He seems like a nice guy.
Oh, he's okay.
Well, I hope he's more than okay. He just asked me out on a date.
And when Tom comes over for dinner, Frasier's accidental innuendo continues.
That's a hell of a view.
It's even better from the bedroom.
A strength of this episode is that the gay character isn't the butt of the joke. The joke is Frasier's cluelessness, his failure to recognize what is obvious to Tom and to the audience. We're not laughing at Frasier because someone thinks he's gay, we're laughing at him because he's so oblivious.
Oh, Niles, didn't ask Tom to dinner, so he'd end up talking to you all night in the kitchen. There are others who would like to have a crack at him.
Eventually, the truth comes out.
But I sensed that you had a problem with me dating Frasier.
Well, if you must know. I'm sorry, what was the question?
And then we get the obligatory I can't believe it's not heterosexual scene.
Well, that's impossible. Tom is not gay. He seems to be under that impression.
This was another common trope of the time, characters in denial about what should be obvious. The same year this episode aired, Murphy Brown showed a straight character experiencing similar denial.
Your bar, The Anchorman, is a gay bar.
Well, that's ridiculous. Just look around. Oh my.
And Blanche was pretty slow to pick up what her brother was trying to say.
This is Doug. He's my friend. My very special friend.
Well, any friend of Clay's.
But now that he realizes what's been going on, it's time for Frasier to clear things up. He's a little uncomfortable about the whole situation.
You're cute when you're nervous.
Well, I must be downright adorable now.
But ultimately, Frasier apologizes as gracefully as he can, and Tom takes the news as gracefully as he can. Even by today's standards, this is a pretty positive depiction of a gay character. There's no hint of hostility from Frasier aside from the awkwardness of having been on a date with his boss. In fact, there's so little homophobia in this episode that I think you could make just a few little changes to the dialogue and make it a comedy of errors about Frasier obliviously going on a date with a female boss. Given how other shows presented homosexuality as some kind of crisis, that this episode doesn't treat it like a big deal is itself a big deal. And in fact, Frasier seems to take Tom's assumption somewhat in stride.
Don't take this wrong, but it never even occurred to me that you might be gay.
Well, it never even occurred to me that you might be straight.
Thank you.
After years of hand-wringing about homosexuality on TV, The Matchmaker came at the start of a very different approach. Around the mid-90s, queer characters stopped being a source of anxiety or causing a crisis, and started just being there. No longer causing a problem of the week, but a fact of life. Friends wrapped up its first season with a lesbian character talking pretty frankly about the realities of being a queer parent.
Everyone knows who you are. Who am I? There's Father's Day, there's Mother's Day, there's no Lesbian Lover Day!
Every day is Lesbian Lover Day!
And then a few months after that, viewers saw multiple episodes about same-sex commitment ceremonies, one on Friends and another on Roseanne. That's probably connected to something that was going on in the news at the time. The case in Hawaii that was started in 1991 looked like it could result in marriage equality being legalized nationwide. Gay marriage was a hot-button issue in 1995 and 1996, or at least it was until Bill Clinton signed the Defense of Marriage Act right before the election. And that was pretty much the end of gay weddings on TV for the 90s. Once DOMA was signed in 1996, the topic almost completely disappeared. But in part because of issues like DOMA and Don't Ask, Don't Tell, LGBTQ issues were a big part of the national conversation around the 1996 election. And while queer people had always recognized the need for political organizing, they were getting really, really good at it by the mid-90s, which was reflected in one of the most positive depictions of a queer character to date, Carter, on the pilot episode of Spin City. On that show, after the mayor accidentally insults the gay community...
Mr. Mayor, would you consider marching in the Gay Pride Parade this week?
What are you, drunk?
His advisors realize they don't have any queer people on staff, so they recruit a local activist. Carter is presented as smart, confident, and the only character with a moral compass in an office full of cynical political operatives.
Thank you for asking me to be a part of this administration. I accept. And I promise you, as long as you're in office, I'm going to be your worst nightmare. Splendid! Welcome aboard.
This was part of a trend that started around 1996, in which sitcoms shifted the way that they presented homosexuality. If Frasier's Matchmaker episode represented a step forward in presenting homosexuality as no big deal, TV was about to go even further by showing that queerness can actually be desirable, something that straight people want to have and keep around, rather than it being a problem to solve. But that was by no means an instantaneous change. There were still episodes of TV where queerness led to crisis, like, for example, Frasier's next gay episode, 1996's The Impossible Dream, in which Frasier is plagued by dreams of having sex with a colleague.
Well, look who's up.
This was one of several gay dream episodes in the 90s. A few years earlier, on Murphy Brown, Miles had a dream about a gay coworker and freaked out.
There's nothing to be embarrassed about. Lots of people have homoerotic dreams.
Have you?
Are you kidding?
I have another Culture Cruise video about that episode. There's a link in the description. And Ellen was also about to have a lesbian dream a year later.
Ellen, did you see they're having a special on melons?
What does it mean that there were multiple gay dream sitcom episodes around this time? Well, if I was television's therapist, I might suggest that various shows were grappling with the question of how to depict homosexuality at a time when standards were shifting from it being presented as a taboo to being presented as a natural part of life. These dream sequences might have been a way of testing the waters, experimenting with the desire to represent queer lives without having a clear roadmap of how to do so. And in fact, TV's actual analyst, Oprah, agrees.
Ellen, if you keep this to yourself, you're just going to continue to have these dreams. And then it's going to start showing up in your waking life as these little clues that get more and more obvious and eventually tiresome.
Little clues is what the impossible dream is all about. After Frasier's first homoerotic dream, he turns to Niles for an explanation.
Then the shower turns off, and out from the bathroom steps a man. All right, go ahead, let me have it.
Are you saying that now, or is that a quote from the dream?
It's worth noting that while Frasier is disturbed by the dreams and baffled, he isn't scared that he might be gay, at least not like Miles was on Murphy Brown a few years earlier. In fact, he's ready to honestly confront the possibility that he has indeed been repressing something.
I've exhausted every other possible interpretation of this dream. Is it possible my subconscious is trying to tell me something about my sexuality?
In fact, Frasier gives voice to something that audiences had long noticed, that he really seems gay, because he conforms to a lot of stereotypes that had always been used as code for queer characters.
I was sensitive as a child. I didn't go in for sports. God, it's every cliche in the book. Surely it must have occurred to you at some point. You refused to take me to see West Side Story on my 8th birthday.
Well, because of the gangs. That's scary for kids.
Even gangs that dance?
Especially gangs that dance.
Speaking from personal experience, this question, is my brain trying to tell me I'm gay, rings very true. I remember when this episode aired in 1996, and I remember watching and thinking halfway through that it was finally going to tell me what I was. At the time, I had a crush on one of my best friends, and I was having dreams that were weirdly similar to Frasier's. I dreamed that we were alone in a bedroom, that we'd kiss, and then at the next day, when I saw him at school, I'd be too nervous to even talk.
Frasier, I've come to tempt you.
Really?
I was also a bit of a Frasier myself in 1996. Sensitive, not sporty, very interested in West Side Story. I figured, okay, whatever Frasier is, that's what I am too. And so I watched, desperately hoping that Frasier and Gil would make out, because then that meant that I could make out with my best friend. Well, sadly, in the end, it turns out that Frasier's dream wasn't telling him anything about himself at all. He realizes he was just having confusing dreams because he was bored and needed someone to analyze.
My show hasn't provided me with a single patient worthy of my skills. I had to invent one myself, me.
This ending left me baffled about myself. I'd been expecting that I could just model myself on whatever Frasier was, but it turned out that the episode was less about his sexuality than about his psychiatric practice, which wasn't a very useful conclusion for a young person desperate for gay role models. Fortunately, 4 months later, a much better role model appeared on Fox.
Zap!
Like Carter on Spin City, The Simpsons presented the character of John as smart and funny and confident. The episode Homer's Phobia didn't just address homosexuality, it came down firmly on the side of homosexuality being something cool and fun. The Simpsons adore the character played by John Waters, all except Homer, who's still clinging to the trope of homosexuality as a problem. He can't say why he doesn't like John, just that he doesn't like anything...
queer? Yeah, and that's another thing. I resent you people using that word. That's our word for making fun of you! We need it!
But by the end of the episode, Homer comes around.
Well, Homer, I won your respect, and all I had to do was save your life. Now, if every gay man could just do the same, you'd be set.
Amen to that.
In this episode, the problem isn't that there's a gay person in their midst. The problem is bigotry. The episode makes it clear, if you think there's something wrong with gays, then there might actually be something wrong with you. And another animated show made a similar argument that year.
I'm Big Gay Al. How are you doing today?
Fine, how are you?
I'm super, thanks for asking.
Once again, we have a gay character who's confident and funny. The episode starts with the main cast expressing homophobia, but by the end, they're generally happy to have queer characters in their midst. Of course, the episode also employs a lot of problematic stereotypes, and South Park is so layered with sarcasm that it can be impossible to tell what side it's actually on. You could read Big Gay Al as a regressive stereotype, or you could read him as a strong, confident, funny femme role model. But because the show makes fun of everyone and everything, it's hard to say that it takes a strong stand in any particular direction. The same goes for Married with Children, which had another gay episode in 1997. In Lesby Friends, we meet Marcy's lesbian cousin Mandy, with both characters played by Amanda Bierce, herself an out lesbian in real life. As with the show's previous gay character, Mandy is instantly popular, well-liked, and her flirting is met with giddy delight.
I think you're gorgeous.
Oh, really?
But of course, the biggest gay TV moment in 1997 was this.
I'm gay.
It's impossible to overstate just what a big deal Ellen's coming out was. It was the first time a sitcom's lead character was queer. The episode was huge, front page news, there were viewing parties all over the country, it was watched by 36 million people, that's roughly equal to the entire population of Canada. Ellen's coming out was a culmination of a beautiful time to be queer on TV. Starting around 1997, television presented viewers with a radically new idea, that homosexuality wasn't a crisis or something just to be tolerated, but something that was embraced, sought out, and celebrated.
Yes, it's very fashionable to be lesbian now.
Yeah, you know, that's pretty much why I did it.
And 1998 seemed like it was going to be a strong year as well. It started off well with one of the best episodes of Frasier ever made, The Ski Lodge, a meticulously crafted door-slamming farce that's so logistically complicated, there's barely even time to register the presence of a gay romance. The episode starts with Frasier and friends heading to a ski lodge, which includes lessons with a French ski instructor. They bring along one of Daphne's sex-crazed friends, and soon everyone's romantically pursuing everyone else, but nobody's quite aligned on who wants to sleep with whom. Once again, it's a comedy of errors and misunderstood innuendo, with the ski instructor pursuing Niles.
And he's not your, cup of tea?
Just between us, my interests lie elsewhere this weekend.
And while everyone runs back and forth and shrieks at finding the wrong person in their beds,
You're not the crane I want.
You're not even the sex I want!
there's never any value judgment either way on the fact that a gay man is interested in Niles. He's just another player in the farce, and it's no more a big deal than any of the other misunderstandings that need to be cleared up.
I am not gay, Guy.
So initially, it seemed like the year was off to a strong start. But after the trend of aspirational queer characters in 1997, 1998 turned out to be a lot more mixed. On one hand, the Ski Lodge features an even-handed depiction of a queer character, and even lets him express romantic interest without anyone finding it scary. But on the other hand, a few months later, ABC canceled Ellen's sitcom, leaving television without its most prominent queer lead. And a few months after that, Will and Grace premiered, ushering in a whole new era of television in which queer characters could be the focus of every single episode. And a few months after that, That 70s Show depicted the first same-sex male kiss on television, but it wasn't a kiss that the main character wanted, and he reacts with a level of terror that feels like a throwback to, well, the 70s. But then by the end of the episode, Eric comes around and seems to accept the attention.
You're so cute.
Well, that is... Well, I guess I am.
So what's going on here? After all the affirming episodes the year before, why was 1998 such a mix of highs and lows and in-betweens? What we're seeing on TV post-Ellen is a mainstreaming of queer storylines. That is, gay characters becoming so commonplace and so integrated into sitcom stories that there's no one way that they're depicted. Some are witty stars, like on Will and Grace, some are friendly guest characters, like in The Ski Lodge, and some feel like throwbacks. Which brings us to Frasier's 2000 episode Out with Dad. It's been 2 years since the Ski Lodge incident, and we're back for another gay farce, and the most open discussion of homosexuality on the show to date. This time, it's Martin who's being courted by a man named Edward who thinks Martin's gay. Why would Edward think Martin's gay? It's the usual series of comedic misunderstandings. Martin tried to get out of a date with a woman by letting her think that he's gay, and believing him, she sets Martin up with her friend.
You see, the truth is, I'm
gay.
Making things more complicated, because of course it has to be more complicated, Frasier is desperately trying to seduce Edward's niece. So that means that Martin needs to keep up the pretense of being gay to avoid offending an elderly woman, a gay man, and Frasier's prospective date. Martin's not thrilled about being set up with a man, but Frasier begs him to go along with it, and Martin agrees for the sake of his son's love life. He does his best to play up the ruse.
Oh, well, don't worry about it. I'll gay it up a little.
In this episode, the queerness is more out in the open than ever. The characters talk about gay people right from the start, although there's still some reliance on stereotypes.
Frasier, these pieces are wonderful. You have exquisite taste.
Oh, he gets that from me. Yes, it was worth all the hours I dragged him around to the museums and the antique shops and teaching him about art and, upholstery.
But the more Martin talks to Edward, the more he finds that they have in common. For example, Edward pretends to enjoy bowling in order to be close to his son, just as Martin is playing gay to help his son's chances with Edward's niece.
Strange, isn't it? The things we'll do to be close to our children.
Oh, yeah. Sometimes it's hard to humor your kids, but...
It's what we do. We're fathers.
Exactly.
In the end, Frasier gets his hookup, Martin makes a new friend, and the gay character is let down so kindly that he sends flowers the next day. It's a super compassionate episode that is particularly humanizing to the gay character. And by the way, Edward is played by Shakespearean actor Brian Bedford, who was openly gay in real life. You might not recognize him here, but maybe you know him better for his voice.
Oh, come along. You worry too much, old boy.
That's right, Robin Hood is gay. Anyway, by the end of the 90s, the trend on sitcoms is increasingly that there is no trend. LGBTQ characters aren't depicted in some uniform, monolithic way or confined to very special episodes. They're just normal.
This fall, John Goodman is a normal guy with one little twist.
If it isn't my gay homosexual son.
Normal, Ohio premieres Wednesday, November 1st at 8:30, 7:30 Central on Fox.
So to review, in the span of a decade, we've gone from gay characters being treated as a crisis, to being met with ambivalence, to being aspirational, and then being so normal it's in the name of the show. So what could possibly come next? Well, an episode of Frasier that combines all of those things, plus Frasier's first gay bar, his first gay kiss, and his first boyfriend. We'll be talking about that episode on the next Culture Cruise video, but in the meantime, big thanks to everyone who makes Culture Cruise possible with a pledge of support on Patreon, folks like Albert Judd. If you're enjoying these videos, head over to patreon.com/mattbaum to check out the rewards for backers. And now, if you'll excuse me, I have to go clear up a misunderstanding. I seem to have given Lilith the wrong impression.
I've always wanted to make love with an alien.